There is a hole in the ground in front of me, and it is shaped exactly like a human body, and the dirt around it is fresh. Not weathered, not rained on. Fresh turned earth, dark and moist. The kind of earth that has been moved within the last few hours. And the shape of the excavation is not rectangular the way a grave is rectangular. It follows a silhouette. Shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, widening at the hips, narrowing again at the feet. The outline of a person pressed into the earth of this Patagonian valley at 4,000 feet of elevation, with no trail within 6 miles, and no other human being within what I believed until this moment was a very long way. The hole is empty. Whatever was supposed to go in it is not there yet. And I am standing over it alone with my pack on my back and the sun dropping fast behind the ridge to my west. And I am about to tell you every single thing that happened from this moment forward. And I promise you that by the time I am done, the thing that will disturb you most is not the hole. It is who dug it, and how they knew exactly what size to make it. I have been backpacking seriously for 11 years across 4 continents, and I have done solo trips in Patagonia twice before this 3rd visit. I tell you this not to establish credentials, but to establish that I am not someone who frightens easily in wild country, not someone who mistakes animal activity for human activity, not someone who interprets natural features as sinister without cause. I know what a guanaco wallow looks like. I know what erosion does to soil. I know what happens when a puma makes a kill and the earth around it gets disturbed. I know what a freshly dug human-shaped hole in the ground looks like, and I know that there is nothing in the natural world that makes one. It is day 6 of a 12-day solo traverse in a section of Patagonia that is not a formal park, not a managed wilderness, but a vast private and public land mosaic of steppe and Linga Beach forest and volcanic ridge that sees very few visitors. I planned this route over 8 months using topographic maps and satellite imagery and the sparse accounts of the handful of people who have traversed this specific section before me. My planned campsites are determined by water sources and terrain marked on my GPS, and between them I often walk 8 or 10 hours without seeing another person or any evidence of one. This is what I came for. The particular solitude of a place so large and so remote that the absence of other humans stops being something you notice and starts being the texture of the air itself. Day 6 brings me down from a high ridge crossing into a wide glacial valley that runs roughly north to south, with a river I need to follow for 2 days before my route climbs again. The valley floor is a mix of low scrub and open meadow, well-drained and flat. Easy walking after the technical ridge. I am in good spirits, making good time, enjoying the afternoon light on the mountains to the east. My campsite for tonight is marked at a bend in the river about 4 miles into the valley. I expect to arrive with an hour of daylight to spare. At approximately 3 miles into the valley, I am crossing a section of open meadow when I see the disturbed earth. It is not hidden. It is not in a depression or behind vegetation. It is in the open meadow, visible from 30 feet, and I see it because my eyes are drawn to the color change, the dark fresh earth against the pale dry grass of the surrounding meadow. I walk to it because it is anomalous, and anomalies in remote wilderness deserve attention. I walk to it, and I stop at its edge, and I look at it, and the recognition of its shape arrives with the slow, terrible clarity of something your brain does not want to accept but cannot argue with. It is body-shaped, 6 feet in length. The shoulder width is the shoulder width of an adult man. The waist narrows correctly. The hips widen correctly. The leg sections are parallel and the correct distance apart. It has been dug to a depth of roughly 18 inches, which is not the depth of a grave, but is the depth of a mold, a form, a shape meant to receive and hold something at the surface. The edges are clean. The walls of the excavation are vertical and precise. This was done with a tool and with intention and with enough time to do it carefully. And it was done recently. The moisture in the exposed subsoil has not yet begun to dry. In this wind and at this altitude and with the sun this angle, I estimate this hole was dug within the last 3 to 4 hours. I straighten up and I look around the valley in every direction. Nothing moves. The scrub is still. The river is too far to hear. The mountains on both sides are empty and enormous. There is no person visible anywhere in this valley. I look at the ground around the hole. The disturbed soil from the excavation has been piled to one side, neatly, the way a careful person piles it. Footprints in the soft earth around the pile, boot prints, partial, the firm meadow grass recovering already, so only the prints closest to the dug soil are clear. I look at the prints. One size, one person, moving around the hole, working, and then the prints lead away, north, toward the scrub at the valley edge. They enter the scrub, and the grass closes over them, and they disappear. I make a decision that I have second-guessed many times since, and always concluded was the only real decision available to me. I do not follow the prints into the scrub. I note the direction, and I continue south along my route, moving faster than I was moving before, checking behind me as I go with the frequency of someone who has understood that they are not alone in this valley and has not yet determined what that means. The light is failing. My campsite is a mile ahead. I reach it, and I set up my tent in the last of the light, and I make no fire. I eat cold food, and I sit in my tent with the doors zipped and my trekking poles inside, and my headlamp on, and I listen to the valley. At some point before midnight, I hear footsteps. Not close, not rushing. The measured footsteps of someone walking the valley floor in the dark, moving south, which is the direction I am moving, and the steps pass at a distance I estimate at 200 to 300 meters from my tent, in the dark, at a pace that is unhurried. They pass my position over the course of maybe 4 minutes, and then they are gone, south, ahead of me, and I sit in my tent, and I breathe, and I make the calculation that whoever is in this valley moved north after digging the hole, and is now moving south again, in the dark, past my position, continuing in my direction of travel, continuing ahead of me. Ahead of me, toward the terrain I need to travel tomorrow. I do not sleep. At first light, before the sun clears the eastern ridge, I break camp and I move south. I cover the next 8 miles in 4 hours, the fastest sustained pace I have managed on this trip, and I do not stop for more than 5 minutes at any point. I find the trail junction where a faint track connects this valley to a ranger outpost 14 miles to the east, and I take it. I abandon my planned route. I walk the 14 miles to the outpost in a single push, arriving at dusk, and I find a ranger there, a young man who speaks limited English, and I describe what I found. I use my GPS to show him the coordinates of the hole. He looks at the coordinates for a long time. He makes a call on his radio. He does not translate the call for me. When he is done, he tells me in careful English that I should stay at the outpost tonight, and that other rangers will come in the morning with questions. 3 rangers come in the morning. They speak among themselves and to me, and they take the coordinates and my description of the boot prints and the direction of the footsteps. They tell me very little. What they tell me is that this section of valley has been noted before in connection with what they describe only as activities they are monitoring. They ask if I saw a person, a vehicle, any structure. I tell them no. They ask about the size of the boot prints. I tell them what I observed. They look at each other and they write things down. They do not tell me what the hole was for. They do not tell me what activities they are monitoring. They escort me to the road, and they arrange transport to the nearest town, and one of them gives me his card and tells me to call if I remember anything else. I have called once since, 3 months after the trip, to ask if there was any resolution. He tells me the investigation is ongoing and thanks me for my cooperation and ends the call. The hole was 6 feet long, the shoulder width of an adult man. My shoulder width, within an inch, which I measured against my sleeping pad that night in the tent, because I could not stop myself. Dug carefully and recently and found empty. And whoever dug, it was moving south through that valley in the dark, ahead of me, toward the terrain I was scheduled to traverse alone for 4 more days. And the earth they piled beside the hole, the earth they planned to use to fill it, they left beside it. because whatever they planned to put in the hole was not yet available to them when I arrived. It was still out there, in the valley, moving, and so was I. Story number 2. There is a note on the floor of my hotel room, and it came from under the door, and it says, "Do not open this door until morning," and I am standing here holding it, and the ink is still faintly damp, and I did not hear the paper slide under the door, and I did not hear footsteps approach or retreat, and I am in a hotel in a city I have never been to before, and no one in this building knows me, and I do not know who slid this note under my door, and I do not know whether the instruction on it is a warning, or a threat, or both, and I am about to look through the peephole, and what I see through the peephole, or more precisely what I do not see, is going to keep me standing against the wall with the lights off until 5:47 in the morning. Not because of what is there, because of what should be there and is not. Because a hotel corridor is lit 24 hours, and a lit corridor seen through a peephole shows everything in it, and what I am seeing through the glass of this peephole is not a lit corridor. It is not a dark corridor. It is nothing. It is a complete and total absence of anything. As if the world on the other side of my door has been replaced with something that produces no light, and no shadow, and no depth. As if whatever is in that corridor does not want to be seen and has found a way to make that absolutely true. I am going to tell you everything about this night, and by the end of it you will never look through a hotel peephole the same way again. I travel for work 3 or 4 times a year, nothing excessive, regional trips, usually 2 or 3 nights in a mid-range hotel, and then home. I am not a person who finds hotels unsettling. I am not a person who checks under the bed or props a chair under the door handle. I sleep well in hotels, better sometimes than at home, because the anonymity of them is a kind of rest. Nobody knows where you are. The world cannot find you. You are a name on a reservation and a key card, and that is all. I have always found this comforting. I no longer find this comforting. The hotel is in a mid-sized city in the inland southeast, a business trip, 2 nights. The hotel is a chain, clean, ordinary, 8 floors, the kind of place where everything is beige and nothing surprises you. I check in on a Tuesday afternoon. My room is on the 6th floor, 614, end of the corridor nearest the stairwell. I note the stairwell because I always take the stairs. The elevator in this building is slow and the stairs are faster, and I have enough travel habits that have calcified into compulsions that I do not question them anymore. I have dinner, I do some work, I watch something on my laptop, and I get into bed at 10:45. The room is quiet. The corridor outside is quiet. I have not seen or heard another guest in the time since I checked in, which is not unusual for a Tuesday in a business hotel. I fall asleep quickly. I wake at 2:11. I know the time because the digital clock on the nightstand is the first thing I focus on when I open my eyes. I wake with the particular snap of someone who has been woken by something rather than by the completion of sleep. I lie still and I listen. The room is quiet. The corridor outside is quiet. Then I hear it. A sound so small and so brief that I would have missed it if I were not already in the heightened alertness of recent waking. The sound of paper on carpet. The friction of something thin and flat being moved across a surface, coming from the direction of the door. I look at the door. In the gap between the bottom of the door and the carpet, there is something white. I get up. I walk to the door, keeping to the side, not in front of it. A habit I cannot explain except that something in the moment tells me not to stand directly in front of the door. I pick up the note from the floor. It is a folded piece of hotel notepad paper, the kind in every room beside the phone. I unfold it. The handwriting is clear and even, and it says 4 words. Do not open this door until morning. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. No room number. Nothing. I look at the note for a long time. I am deciding what it is. A prank. A confused person who has the wrong room. Something relating to a guest emergency that a staff member has communicated poorly. I work through these options and none of them fully satisfy me, but all of them are more comfortable than the alternative, which is that someone slid a serious instruction under my specific door in the middle of the night and meant it for me, and had a reason for it that I do not yet understand. I go to the peephole. I lean forward and I put my eye to the glass. The peephole in a hotel door is a wide-angle lens, and it shows you the corridor outside in a fisheye view, curved at the edges, bright in the center, the overhead corridor lights rendering everything visible. I know this. I have looked through dozens of hotel peepholes, and I know what they show. What this one shows is nothing. Not darkness in the way a blocked peephole goes dark, not the flat black of a lens being covered. Nothing in the way that no image is formed. No light, no shadow, no walls, no floor, no ceiling, no corridor. The peephole is showing me the visual equivalent of silence. As if the lens is functioning, but there is nothing on the other side of it capable of reflecting or absorbing light. As if the corridor does not exist right now. I pull back from the peephole. I stand against the wall beside the door, and I breathe slowly, and I think. A peephole can appear dark for two reasons. Either it is blocked from the outside, covered by something pressed against the lens, or the light source it depends on has failed. I listen for any sound in the corridor. Nothing. I wait 1 full minute, and I look through the peephole again. Still nothing. The same visual absence. Whatever is outside my door is producing this effect from whatever distance it is at, and I cannot determine whether that distance is 3 inches or 3 feet, because the absence gives me no information at all. I do not open the door. I want to be clear about this. I make the decision within the first 60 seconds that I am not opening the door, and I commit to it completely, and what I do instead is turn off every light in the room, so that there is no light visible under the door from my side, and I sit against the wall beside the door with my phone in my hand, and I wait. At 2:40, I hear breathing in the corridor. Not loud, not distressed. Slow, regular, nasal breathing. The breathing of something that is simply being in a space. Moving slowly, it sounds like along the corridor in the direction of my door. It slows further as it approaches, and then it stops. And for a period I estimate at 7 minutes, I can hear breathing on the other side of my door. I do not move. I do not breathe audibly. My hand on my phone is completely still. The breathing on the other side of my door is steady and patient and unhurried, and then it begins to move again, away from my door, continuing down the corridor, fading, and then it is gone. I look through the peephole. The corridor is there. Lit. Normal. Empty. The overhead lights are on, and the walls and floor and ceiling of the 6th floor corridor of a beige business hotel are visible in their complete, unremarkable entirety. Whatever effect was producing the visual absence is gone. The corridor looks exactly as it should at 2:47 in the morning. I look both ways along it, as far as the fisheye allows. Empty in both directions. Nothing. I call the front desk. The night staff member who answers, a young man who sounds startled to receive a call at this hour, listens to what I describe, and he tells me he will check the corridor and call me back. He calls me back 4 minutes later and tells me he has walked the 6th floor corridor and found nothing, and everyone is checked in and the corridor looks fine. He asks if I want him to send security up. I say yes. A security guard comes up and walks the floor and knocks on my door and shows me his ID badge through the peephole before I open the door, and he walks the corridor with me, and there is nothing. The corridor is a corridor. At the end near the stairwell, on the carpet, there is nothing except a dark patch of moisture in front of the stairwell door, roughly the size of a large foot, wet enough to have been recent, dry enough at the edges to be not brand new. One print, from whatever came out of or went into the stairwell. One print of moisture in front of the door. The security guard photographs it and tells me it was probably a wet mop. The wet mop that was mopping the 6th floor corridor at 2:40 in the morning. I say yes, probably. He walks me back to my room and I lock the door and I sit against the wall until 5:47 when the light under the door tells me morning has arrived, and I gather my things and I check out and I sit in my car in the hotel parking structure and I call my wife and I talk to her for 40 minutes about nothing important, about home, about the ordinary details of our life, because I need to hear evidence that the ordinary world is still running correctly. Because for 7 minutes at 2:40 in the morning something stood outside my door and breathed, and the peephole showed me nothing, and the note on my floor said, "Do not open this door until morning," and whatever slid that note under my door knew that it would be there, knew that it was coming, wanted me still, wanted me behind a closed door, warned me. And I have never been able to decide whether the note was written by someone who wanted to protect me or by whatever was breathing on the other side of my door, giving me the instruction that would keep me in place, keep me quiet and still and waiting, while it stood outside in the corridor that the peephole could not see, and did whatever it came to that floor to do. Story number 3. Both my tires have just gone flat at exactly the same moment, and I am 20 miles from the nearest town on a cycling route through empty country at 11:40 at night, and I need you to understand what simultaneously means in this context. Not one and then the other in quick succession. Not a blowout that destabilized me and took the second tire on impact. At exactly the same moment, both tires on a road with no debris I can find. In a flat release that was not explosive, not a blowout, not a pinch, but a slow and immediate deflation, both at once, that brought me to a gradual stop in the dark on a road I have cycled 6 times before without incident. I have been cycling seriously for 9 years, and I know what causes tire failures, and I know what does not cause this, what cannot cause this, what requires intention and access to both tires simultaneously to cause this. And I know that whatever caused it was done while I was moving at 22 miles per hour with my tires in contact with the road, and I did not feel it happen, and I did not hear anyone near me, and the road behind me is empty, and the road ahead of me is empty, and I am alone on a dark road with a useless bicycle and no signal on my phone and 20 miles between me and another person. And something made this happen. Something planned for me to be exactly here, exactly stopped, exactly now. Stay with me. Stay with me all the way to the end of this, because what I find when the morning comes, what the daylight shows me about the road surface at the point where I stopped, is the thing that has never left me. Is the thing that tells me this was not the first time someone was stopped on this road in this way, and that I am not the last. I have been cycling this particular rural route since I moved to the area 4 years ago. It is a loop of approximately 60 miles through farmland and low hills, well-paved, low traffic, and I do it in stages, usually the full loop on weekends and sections of it during the week. The night cycling portion of my training, which I do on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from late spring through early fall, typically takes me on the eastern section of the loop, a 22-mile stretch of straight and gently rolling road that runs between 2 small towns. At the turnaround point, I am 11 miles from either town. The road passes no houses for about 8 miles in the middle of this section, just field edges and the occasional copse of trees, open and flat, and very dark once the moon is not up. It is a Thursday in August. I leave the eastern town at 9:45, later than I like to start because I had a work call that ran over. The temperature is comfortable, around 68 degrees. There is almost no wind, and the road surface is dry and clean. My lights are strong, a 1500 lumen front light, and a bright red rear flasher. I am in good condition and moving well, settling into the rhythm of the first few miles, the world contracting to the cone of my front light and the sound of my tires on the pavement and my own breathing. I know this road. I know where the surface changes, where the slight grades are, where the farm track intersections briefly widen the verge. I could ride it with my eyes closed. I am at mile 9.4, well into the open central section, moving at 22 miles per hour on a flat when the tires go. I feel it in the handlebars first, the sudden absence of the slight firmness that pressurized tires give to the steering, and then the rear end changes its feel, and within 4 seconds I am riding on rims, and I brake carefully, and I come to a stop. I stand astride the bike, and I look at both tires. Both completely flat, both down to the rim. I squeeze each one. No pressure at all in either. I get off the bike and I crouch and I look at both tires with my front light. No visible debris. I run my fingers around both tires on the road contact surface. No glass, no thorns, no nails, nothing embedded. I look at the road surface under where I stopped. Clean asphalt. I look back up the road the way I came, lighting it with my light. Clean surface as far as I can see. I pull the front tube and I find the hole. Small, circular, round punched, not a tear or a pinch. I pull the rear tube. Same. Small, circular, clean-edged. The same instrument has made both holes. The same size, the same shape, the same clean circular puncture in both inner tubes. Made from the outside of the tire through the tread. Pushed in, from the outside, through a moving tire. Both tires. At the same time. I stand in the road with both punctured tubes in my hands, and I look at them, and I look at the road, and I look at the surrounding dark, and I do not have a framework for what I am holding. I put the tubes in my jersey pocket because they are evidence of something, and I do not know what yet, and I do not want to leave them. I pull out my phone. No signal. I hold it up in different directions. One bar appears for a moment on a compass bearing northeast and vanishes. I walk the bike to the verge, and I lay it down, and I take stock. I am 9.4 miles from the eastern town and 11.6 miles from the western town. The eastern town is closer. The road is completely empty in both directions. I have seen 2 cars in the last hour of riding. It is 11:53 p.m. I begin to walk east, pushing the bike by the saddle, which is the most manageable way to walk a bike with flat tires, and I go about a quarter mile before I hear the car. It is coming from the west. Behind me, headlights appearing over a gentle rise about half a mile back. I stop. I face the road. I wave my arm and my front light toward the approaching car, because 20 miles of walking is not a reasonable option, and a car at this time of night on this empty road is not a thing I am willing to let pass without trying. The car slows. It slows significantly, early, further back than a normal slowing to stop would require, and it pulls to the opposite shoulder rather than my shoulder, and it stops with its headlights on me. The engine stays running. No one gets out. I wait. The car sits on the opposite shoulder with its engine running and its headlights on me, and no door opens. I raise my hand again in a neutral wave, a here I am, I need help wave. Nothing. The car sits. I can see the headlights and the vague dark shape of the vehicle, but I cannot see the driver. I cannot see if there is one person or several. I cannot see anything inside the car because my eyes are adjusted to dark and the headlights are blinding me to everything behind them. I begin to walk toward the car, and the car pulls forward. Not fast. It pulls forward on the opposite shoulder, maintaining the distance between us, moving as I move toward it. I stop. The car stops. I take 2 steps toward it. It moves forward 2 car lengths, maintaining distance. Whatever is in that car does not want me to reach it, does not want me close, but it is not leaving. I turn away from the car and I walk east, my original direction, pushing my bike. I walk for 2 minutes and I look back. The car is following, on the opposite shoulder, headlights on me, maintaining the same distance. I walk faster. The car stays at the same distance. I stop suddenly. The car stops. This continues for 6 minutes of walking, and then I hear another car from the east, from ahead of me, and it is moving fast, and its headlights are coming directly toward me. And as its lights reach the stretch of road between us, the car on the opposite shoulder pulls a U-turn and accelerates west, and within 30 seconds its taillights are gone over the rise, and it is gone. The car from the east is a pickup truck, and the driver stops, and he is a farmer, 60s, heading home from his brother's place. And he puts my bike in the truck bed, and he drives me to the eastern town, and we do not talk much, but I am grateful for every second of his presence. I file a report with the local police department the next morning, and an officer drives the section of road with me. On the road surface at mile 9.4, at the exact point where I came to a stop, the officer finds something I missed in the dark. 2 thin steel pins, driven vertically into a crack in the asphalt, positioned in the road surface precisely on the line where both tires would contact the road simultaneously at the width of a bicycle's track. driven in and cut flush with the surface so they protrude approximately 3 millimeters, enough to punch a clean hole in a moving inner tube under the weight of a cyclist, not enough to be easily visible or to affect a car tire. 2 pins, set in the road surface, set at bicycle tire spacing, set at the exact point where I stopped. Someone measured my tire spacing, or measured a standard bicycle tire spacing, and set 2 pins in a road crack at the exact width and drove them to the exact height to puncture both tires simultaneously while I was moving. Someone was on that road before I was. Someone prepared that road for me, or for a cyclist, and then waited. In a car, on the opposite shoulder, at a distance they maintained with patience and precision. And when the second car came and made the situation witnessed, they left. They had what they needed, or they lost what they were waiting for. Either way, they drove west into the dark and disappeared. The officer removes the pins with pliers and bags them and files the report and tells me the investigation is open and he will be in touch. He has not been in touch. I called twice in the following month. Open investigation, he says. Both times. Nothing further. 2 pins in a road crack at bicycle tire spacing and a car that followed me in the dark for 6 minutes at a maintained distance and then ran when a witness appeared. And I think about what was supposed to happen after the tires. After I stopped and was standing alone in the dark 9 miles from the nearest town, I think about what the car was waiting for me to do. I think about what would have happened if the second truck had not come from the east when it did. I think about this and I conclude, every time, that the pins in the road were not the plan. The pins in the road were only the beginning of the plan. And the rest of the plan was sitting in a car on the opposite shoulder with its engine running and its lights on me in the dark, waiting for me to have no other option, waiting with the same patience it had used to set those pins in the road. The patience of something that had chosen me and prepared for me, and was simply waiting for the moment when the preparation was complete and the choice had been made for me, and there was nothing left between us but the dark and the empty road in 20 miles of no one.